I want to talk about giving up. It's a very interesting topic. And giving up has been a big process for me. It's happened in stages. There's a very long stage of trying to give up, trying to let go, which is just another way of holding on. The trying, the efforting is none other than clinging in disguise, clinging in a very noble disguise. And I'm sure many of us, maybe all of us, I don't know, many of us though I know, have had the type of experience where you're trying for something. Maybe it's trying to change somebody, or pushing to find a job, or whatever it is, like trying so hard to make something happen in your life. And then so frequently, it's like the moment that you let go and give up, like completely give up and almost like forget about it, something shifts. And so the letting go as it pertains to awakening is exactly the same thing. And what I've found for myself is that there was like a natural readiness that occurred pretty recently. Yeah, a natural readiness. And before that, it was like a trying to heal, trying to ascend, whatever you want to call it, trying to become enlightened. There was a lot of effort, but it was all disguised. It's all disguised. All like more and more subtle forms of escape and avoidance of exactly what's here. Exactly just this, it's just this. And so there's something that has kind of been arising for me lately that was very interesting. So symbolism I find very fascinating. And the symbol of the devil kept coming up in my life. I kept seeing images of the devil. I was reading a book that talks a little bit about Moby Dick, and basically the tagline of that book is, what is it? Something along the lines of, I baptize thee not in the name of the Father, but in the name of the devil. And then 666, those numbers just everywhere. Gas station, revenue on my Etsy page, the temperature in my house, just literally like kept looking up and just 666 everywhere. And I found that really fascinating, and I found myself becoming intrigued with the images specifically that were coming up. Two of the images in particular. One was a drawing that was done by a man. I don't know the person's name. It was signed, but found it on the internet. A guy that drew it like in the 1800s, maybe 1840s. But it was the devil sitting at the edge of a man's bed, serenading him to sleep with a fiddle or a violin, something like that. And then the second image that really jumped out to me was from a Ray LaMontagne album, and it's a devil dancing with a blindfolded woman. And it was funny to me curious to me that in both of those images, the people essentially were unconscious of what was happening. So blindfolded, dancing with the devil, and being serenaded to sleep. And then I found myself revisiting passages in the Bible where Jesus either mentions the devil outright or kind of references the devil. And it seems very clear to me that the devil is a metaphor for illusion and the sleep state or ego. It's all the ways that we put ourselves to sleep. It's not real, it's Maya, it's illusion. And the funny thing about this is, you know, in this process of awakening, there's this diving in to every dark place, every single dark place, and it's been strange. You know, it's hard to explain this if you haven't been through it. But there was a time a few years ago, you know, I did so much therapy and worked with psychedelics for a number of years, really intensely. And had really convinced myself that I had reached the bottom of the barrel with all these things because I had seen it all. I had seen all of the dark places, you know? I knew. My mind knew of all of these shadows. It knew about the shadows. I was aware of them. And yet, these patterns, these like dysfunctional patterns were continuing to loop and play out in my life. I kept finding myself in the same situations, in the same arguments with people, you know, looping in the same thought patterns of self-loathing or self-hatred or unworthiness. And, you know, at the time I had been through, you know, kind of a transcendent movement. So my mind knew this isn't true. This thought isn't true. This belief isn't true. And I could sit and I told myself that over and over, and it would, you know, for a time quell the thought, kind of put it back, lull it back to sleep, you know. It's the devil lulling me back to sleep. So that happened over and over. But then there was just like this intuition that something else was being asked. Because I realized that the beliefs themselves had not actually liberated out of the system, had not freed themselves out of the system. So they were still playing out like really fundamental. And it's taken me like digging in really deep into things like that don't feel spiritual. You know, that's the funniest part. Like it doesn't feel spiritual. Shadow work and inner child work and psychotherapy, brain spotting, somatic experiencing, all of these things that are not spiritual. They're not transcendent. They're not mystical or esoteric. It's very fucking human. And it was all, the funny thing is, it was all stuff that I knew, that I saw, that I understood wasn't true, wasn't the truth of me, wasn't what I am. But that wasn't enough. It required a giving up. And that was like a readiness that just kind of matured on its own, I think. And the circumstances of my life just led into that perfectly. Like there was so much clinging and then trying to change things, trying to transcend things. But there was this interesting moment. There's actually via the help of a very wonderful therapist that I have been working with. But I found myself wanting to transcend this core wound of unworthiness that I was sensing in myself. And, you know, I could see very clearly, started noticing all these patterns in my life, and I could see how they were just like spokes on a wheel, and the hub was this like fundamental belief of like self-hatred and unworthiness. And I had spent so much time in my life forgiving other people, understanding and empathizing with other people, but I'd never turned that mirror around on myself. Because I told myself that, like, I know it's not true. I'm not this body. I'm not these stories. I'm not these thoughts. I'm not these beliefs. And I thought that was enough. But it's not. It wasn't. And it took So I found myself wanting to transcend that unworthiness and wanting to rip it out, you know. But what I realized was that was just another sneaky avoidance tactics. It was basically, you know, unconsciously, well, why do I want to transcend this belief of unworthiness? It's because I think the belief itself is unworthy. And that's just that same belief operating in a circle, the, you know, snake swallowing its own fucking tail. Crazy. So crazy, so interesting, fascinating, really. So that's really, you know, when I looked at it, it was this like cyclical thing. And it required, you know, what I realized is, you know, if you're using like the devil metaphor, the devil is all of your shadows, all the things you've been hiding from yourself and avoiding, all the patterns that are still playing out, even if you know they're not true, even if you know your own devil, you're still getting swept up in it and it's still lulling you to sleep. And it took a willingness to just let it be, literally to like sit down and have tea with it. I think there's a Rumi poem that says something along those lines, you know, invite it in, have tea, instead of trying to get rid of it. So you can't slay your devils, you can't slay your shadows. You just sit with them, have a chat, move through them. And it's not the thing is, it's so subtle. It's not moving through them to try to get rid of them. And that's something that shifted here probably late last year, November, October, something like that. I don't remember, but so 4 or 5 months ago, something like that. But it really shifted here. So it went from, I want to realize the truth, I want to become enlightened, I want to wake up. And it just turned into something very simple, but it was in earnest. It was really in earnest. It was, I am ready to see myself clearly, like completely clearly. Not to try to become a better person, because you know that my mind knows that there is no person. So it's not to try to become a better person. It's just, I want to see it, all of it, every last stone, clearly. Completely clearly. And little did I know that would lead to probably like the most gruesome 4 or 5 months that I can remember in my life, actually. Because it was, you know, what ended up happening was literally like all the things I had seen, all the things I had like sat with, all my trauma, and really dived into it really deeply. But I think for such a long time it was coming from a place of trying to heal it. And that was like this sneaky little trap that just kept it spinning in place. So what happened was having to move back into all of the things that I had already seen, that I had already thought that I dealt with, but that I was subtly resisting still. I was seeing them arise and then like pushing them away by saying it's not true. But what's required is actually, it feels counterintuitive, like most steps in an awakening process. It feels like a backward step. It feels like the opposite of what your mind would think to do. It's not pushing it away. It's also not indulging it though. But it's finding that place of like clarity and consciousness, and it's like diving into it, like diving into a pool, like a deep pool, and going deeper. And if there's images, so maybe it's like a feeling, a sensation in the body that's arising. And it's sitting with that feeling, the sensation, moving into it, going deeper. Maybe there's images that pop into the mind. Maybe there's words that want to be spoken. And literally letting all that play out and feeling it completely. Letting it dance its dance right in front of the light of your consciousness. So it'll probably lead down a path and essentially kind of show you how a belief was formed, you know? Like how the belief that's still spinning in place was actually formed, and ends up showing you like its own innocence, like the innocence of the mistake that was made in its formation and its belief. And then through that, it seems to let go. And there's not an idea here that nothing will ever arise again, but it's like learning to be with those things in a totally different way. So it's like noticing in a moment that something's arising, and then even if I'm in the middle of a conversation, like taking a pause, saying, excuse me, I need to sit with something for a moment, taking a pause, going and sitting by myself for a moment if I need to, or just closing my eyes and sitting quietly and following something down until the bottom is reached. And then it's like through the bottom is where the beingness, the wholeness is not arising, is just exist. It's already there. That's where it's hiding. It's like you have to go through the dark to find the light, you know. You have to go into the sensation, into the belief, into the feeling in order to find the bottom. And it's hard, you know. It's uncomfortable. It's a lot of stuff that, you know, there's like emotions that'll arise, like maybe shaking in the body. Stories that are coming up, anger, you know, various things like that, all sorts of things. But it's not pushing any of it away anymore. It's allowing it, it's following it. Almost like you're out, you know, walking in the woods or out like on an adventure with a child, and think about like holding hands with a child, and the child's kind of like running ahead and dragging you behind, like, hey, come here, come look at this, come over here. It's that. You know, the child is the belief or the sensation or the feeling, and it's trying to lead you somewhere. And consciousness is the adult, you know, kind of being dragged behind and being a witness. And allowing it to be as it is, you know, like allowing the imagination of the child to come forth and the stories, and like allowing it completely, not pushing it away, not judging it, not saying, oh, that's not true. Because most of us wouldn't say that to a child, you know, like, oh, I don't know, like we're going on an adventure in the wilderness and, you know, whatever, like a story being made up, like in the middle of imagination and playtime. You're not going to say to a child, like, you know, that's not true, right? Or at least I hope most of us wouldn't. It's the same idea, because those parts that have been cast aside are parts that have been fragmented from childhood, you know. And so like part of my path in awakening and just in my life is shamanism. And I realized that shamanism in the Western world has kind of like a weird connotation, and it's like very, I don't know, people seem to have an idea that there's like magic and mysticism and bestows powers on you and all these interesting, silly things. But what I see is it's a path to truth. It's coming to see clearly, you know, clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairaudience, yeah. That means clear seeing, clear hearing, clear feeling. And that's what is bestowed through the process of awakening. It's not something, I mean, it's something you could cultivate, but that's just another cul-de-sac. Because as long as there's a me in the way, it'll never be seeing clearly. But, I don't remember where I was going with that. Talking about shamanism. Let's just sit with that for a moment, see where it leads, see if it comes back. In the meantime, look at the beautiful creek behind me on my property. It's winter. Feel so grateful to have this be my playground. It's been deep medicine, deep healing that's happened here. So there's a readiness in giving up and letting go. And what I didn't realize was that I was trying to let go, but I thought that I was letting go, but I was trying to hang on to my pacifier and my blankies. I was trying to take them with me. But you can't take anything with you. Because the thing is, like, there literally is no other. I made a video about this recently, but there is no other. And like, it's so clear now in interacting with people that I'm talking to myself, looking myself in the eyes. The outward expression appears different, but it's not. And so life is literally, your life is the only teacher that you need. And I've said this before, but it's so potent. You know, in all of the ways that I've tried, none of that trying and efforting has gotten me anywhere. It's been life literally asserting situations on me and grace on me in just such a way that I only realize usually afterwards is so perfect. And, you know, provided the readiness. So like and it's this weird paradox. It's not like listening to this stuff doesn't, I don't know, contribute to that readiness in some way, because sometimes there's just like a key that you get from somewhere that opens a door that you're standing at, but you can't give away that autonomy, because ultimately you have to find your way through this yourself. And I've been in so many situations, or, you know, at so many points in this where I found myself kind of just parroting what teachers were saying or what Henry would say. But somewhere deeper down, I knew that I didn't actually have that personal experience. And so I've had to find that for myself. And then it's like going back and maybe listening to things with totally different ears and just being like, oh shit, that's what they're talking about. Now I see, because I've been there. It's almost like only in retrospect. It's so strange. It's like only in retrospect that spiritual teachings actually make any sense, which is so weird. So very strange. But there's just such a deep perfection in everything. And it's like kind of life forcing your hand, like forcing you to look in the mirror so that you can't look away. So in my own life, it's been a lot of like really hard shit in the last 8 months since moving out to West Virginia, like big, huge transitions. And it's like life. It's the circumstances, the situation, the interpersonal stuff that has arisen out of that. That has been the grace. That has been the teacher when I really look at it. It's all the efforting. It was only making it harder. That was only my way of avoiding, continuing to avoid or trying to hang on, you know, under the guise of trying to create a letting go. So strange. Bailey in the background waiting for me. That's all I got. Peace.